Okay, so here we are. We're about maybe 2/3 of the way up Mount Katadhin, or just Katadhin, and we've hit the tree line. The trees are below us. There's only granite rock above us. It's been a really difficult hike, but we made it this far, and you can see the clouds behind us. So I wanted to talk a little bit more about this idea of Yehovah and Torah and freedom. Again, as I had mentioned, that when Yehovah appeared to the nation of Israel, it was to do nothing else but free them from slavery, from the bondage in Egypt. So Egypt represented slavery, and not just physical slavery, in my opinion, but also a mental slavery. You know, kind of a lifestyle that was not in the flow of the universe. So likewise today, whether you live in the United States, or especially let's focus on the United States, but also if you live in the state of Israel, which is basically just a Western outpost at this time, or the only other culture that it has is Talmudic culture, both of which are out of whack. So, So if you live in the United States, or if you live in Israel, you're enslaved by the surrounding mentality. You're not free, and you don't feel free. So what do? What do most people do? They disappear into television, they disappear into movies, they disappear into pharmaceutical drugs, antidepressants, eating, all this kind of stuff. And this is a sign of an unhappy life. This is a sign of slavery. Okay, so let me give an example of a slavery. Okay, so if you take the complicated rabbinical understanding of, let's say, kashrut, or separation of milk and meat. Okay, so it becomes so complicated. You have to separate all milk and all meat, and then you have to separate not only red meat from milk, but you have to separate chicken from milk, and then some people separate fish from meat, and different plates and different sets of plates, and all kinds of things that you need to do if the milk touches the meat, and if meat touches a dairy plate, or dairy touches a meat plate, and on and on and on and on, until you could drive yourself absolutely mad, which is what most Orthodox rabbinical Jews do, which is why they're so massively neurotic and nasty to each other, a lot of them, and unhappy.
Cunning,
there you go.
Vile.
And miserable. Okay, so what does the Torah say? Okay, the Torah
With
says,
a high negative ego.
There you go. The Torah says, don't cook a kid in its mother's milk. Now, the Torah often will use the idea of gedi, of a kid, to represent kind of a template, but basically what the pshat interpretation of this is just don't cook an animal in its own mother's milk. Okay, apparently in ancient times the surrounding nations would do this for perhaps a fertility ritual. Whether that's the case or not, the Torah's prohibition of doing this makes a lot of sense. It's disgusting to cook an animal, a baby, in its own mother's milk. That milk is meant to make the baby grow and thrive, and to take that baby and cook it in its own mother's milk is something vile and disgusting. So taken in a pshat form, the Torah makes perfect sense. It's beautiful, it's simple, it's straight to the point. Okay, if you lived in ancient Israel and you had a farm, or even if you have a farm today, and you had a baby goat, and its mother, or let's even say a baby sheep and its mother, or maybe a baby cow and its mother, then you would be careful not to you would not cook the baby in its mother's milk. Okay, so that's respect for motherhood, that's respect for life, that's respect for the essence of nourishing the baby. Okay, now the rabbis would say, oh well, I heard this from actual rabbis when I was in yeshiva, or how do we call it, Eliezer?
Yeshira.
There you go. So when I was in yeshiva, I heard this from many rabbis. Well, how do you know? Maybe you're going to go to the store and you're going to buy milk, and you're going to buy meat, and it's going to turn out that the milk comes from the milk comes from the mother and the meat comes from the child. Well, I mean, that's so ridiculous. I mean, the Torah doesn't deal with extreme possibilities, which the chances are practically zero. That would be like saying, oh well, I'm not going to walk outside at all because there's a possibility that, I don't know, maybe someone is going to throw lard in my face and a little tiny molecule of lard is going to go down my throat. Okay, the possibilities of such things are so ridiculous as to make them irrelevant, and that's a lot of times what the rabbis do. They will take or as Orthodox Judaism went on and on, got more and more crazy and more ridiculous. They'll take these extremely low, possibility things, and they'll say that that's the reason. Well, that's not the reason. The reason really is to add more laws, more control, more enslavement, more slavery, more oppression, and really to control and oppress and make the rest of the population as neurotic and miserable and unhappy as they are themselves. And with that, we'll end. We're gonna try to get up to the rest of Mount Katadhin. It's getting kind of chilly up here, as you can see the way I'm dressed. It's actually June 1st, but it's chilly up here. So Eliezer, any closing words before we sign off?
Yeah, that sooner or later, colorism is going to take over.
Okay, there we go. I like